Everybody. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Frederik Verducht. I am the senior VCN SE specialist from VMware. In itself, that might not say a lot, but VCN stands for Virtual Cloud Network, which means I spend most of my time doing anything network and security related in the VMware portfolio. And perhaps, Richard, you already want to.
Yes, thanks, Frederick. So my name is Richard Lopez Duarte. I'm a channel security engineer at Checkpoint. So doing everything concerning the Checkpoint products, and we'll be covering the specific solution that we have in integration with the VMware Video Cloud solution here. So Frederick, I'll leave you to start up.
Yes, thank you, Richard. If all is well, everybody can see my screen. Just a simple nod from the panelist is okay. Thank you. So I have 45 minutes, which seems like a lot, but it isn't. I have prepared a small agenda. I'm going to discuss the role of SD-WAN in general, and then how that relates to what VMware is doing in that field. I'll go over some generic overview, some of the benefits that we propose, as well as a small introduction of the broad ecosystem that comes with the platform, which is obviously then the bridge to Richard's solution. So where to start? I thought it was perhaps a good idea to start with situating the problem that we're facing today. And that's mainly coming out of how we see that the modern branch office is exploding or is transforming in itself, and all across different industries. So there's really no specific virtual where SD-WAN is more or less relevant. We see this all over the board. We see a tremendous change in how those branches are being leveraged. And the form of a branch, it can have different forms. Typically, when we think of a branch, we think of a remote office, and that's very easy to visualize. It's a couple of desks and a couple of portables, and the people that work on those desks, they need access to the backend applications and resources that typically run inside the headquarters, inside the data center. But different forms, something as simple as a teller, for especially in financial services, where you have a terminal basically that is hosting a specific application to retrieve money or to check your balance, for instance. Other stuff like IoT definitely plays a role when we talk about SD-WAN. And for some people, you might think IoT, it's not for us, or it's too modern or whatever. But think of something as simple as an unmanned gas station. That's the definition of IoT. There are no real people managing those pumps, but your customers can still go to those pumps and put gas in your cars. So there's a lot of metering and censoring and a financial aspect because you need to pay for that gas. So different forms of applications that need to be accessed from that specific branch, if you like. So different forms, like I said, no real line to be drawn across different industries. All of those industries have a need of developing a branch. And of course, the closer they want to get to their customers, the different sizes or different possibilities of the branch will be available. So that's one thing. The branch in itself is already changing. Another aspect that plays a role when organizations are looking into SD-WAN is the movement towards cloud. Lots of benefits on the cloud. I'm not going to go into detail of that, but we see a clear path for different organizations, whether that's a hybrid cloud, some on-prem applications and some off-prem and thus cloud-based applications. That's something that we see quite a lot, to be honest. We also see a lot of companies that adapt to a multi-cloud strategy. So they are not married with one single cloud provider, but they leverage different clouds for different reasons. Could be that their compute is running in Amazon, for instance, and then they leverage Office 365, which is also a cloud-based solution. The movement towards the cloud also dictates that the network that's currently in place between branches and data centers should be adapted to that form of communication, and that's not always the case. Which brings me to the actual problem. The problem being today, when we look at, let's call them legacy for now, legacy WAN connectivity, it's typically done by private lines or some form of MPLS. While in itself it works fine, it doesn't really scale to the needs of a modern cloud consumption. Because that would imply that all your branches have direct internet connectivity. And as soon as you do that, you need to put the right form of security in place for those branch offices, the same kind of security that you already had in place in your headquarters that now needs to scale to those branches as well. And perhaps you need communication between the branches if they need to share data between them. And perhaps you need a connectivity back to the data center. So different forms of different ways as well to provide that form of connectivity. Something that history has taught us is that in itself, again, pretty good technology, but when it grows exponentially, when it grows globally, for instance, it can be a complex matter. And in itself, complexity can be managed, but it's especially the slow operations that I want to focus on. Because if you consume an MPLS, you're typically not the owner of an MPLS. You do that through a service provider or a partner. And then let's say you want to do a change to a specific branch. It typically involves raising a ticket with the partner and then waiting till somebody picks the ticket up. So changes to existing connections are typically slow, or making changes to those connectivity is typically slow. And I'm not even talking about raising a new connection, adding a new branch that typically takes weeks, months to have that right form of connectivity in place. So that's what I mean when there's a form of complexity and slow operations. If you want to scale in terms of bandwidth, it typically can be very costly or expensive, because it typically comes in slices of bandwidth. So the more you need, the more you pay, obviously. It's also not really scaled to your specific applications, because what you have is a network, and the network in itself is not application aware, if you want to call it. So it does provide connectivity, but it doesn't take into account your specific business, which could relate in poor application experience. Another thing we see often is backhauling back to the data center to start consuming cloud services. And that's a mistake that's often made, because if you have a lot of branch sites all around, let's say Belgium or even the world, and you want to give them the same level of security, we typically see that the traffic is then coming back to the data center before it hits the internet and before it hits any kind of cloud service. Because again, typically you can do a lot of security in the data center. At that point, it's centralized and everybody needs to pass that way. Of course, if you want to adapt to a cloud strategy, it would make more sense that every branch in itself could immediately go to those cloud services, and that you could have the same level of security that you already have inside your private data center. And I don't need to talk about security threats, because we have Richard on the call. He's obviously going to cover that. He's the expert of the matter. But it goes without saying. And it's something we've seen, especially this year with stuff like COVID. Working from home or just remote connectivity has increased spear phishing kind of attacks, where people attacked even healthcare. Go figure. In times of COVID, hackers are focusing on healthcare organizations, which I would believe would be the last thing to do in a case like COVID. But anyway, we see a tremendous increase in how attackers attack organizations. They don't attack the data center directly, but they try to find a hole in the branch, because of different reasons, it's typically not as secured as the data center. So many different reasons Um, Money, expensive could be one, complexity could be one, inefficiency could be another. Many different reasons why organizations are looking into SD-WAN. And the reason they are doing that is actually very simple. Over the last almost decade, we, VMware and others, have been very successful in modernizing the data center. Right, so we've brought virtualization in form of a software-defined data center to the traditional data center, and those data center owners have really seen the benefits of virtualizing specific network and security services, because now they can spawn services whenever they want. They are not married with the physical layer anymore because it's all virtualized, and that comes with lots of benefits. And it's the same kind of benefits that organizations want from those cloud services. It's based on a similar aspect, but more importantly, and in the case of this webinar, also to the branch and mobile users. And that's the main reason why people are looking into SD-WAN. Now, what has that to do with VMware? VMware's vision for a couple of years now has been all about being able to connect any kind of device for any kind of app that that device needs to access over any kind of cloud. So basically our strategy is to make sure that everybody from everywhere is able to access the data they require. Now, of course, again, in the context of this seminar, it's especially the everywhere and not so much the specific device or the data centers we're going to cover. But in order for this to work, you need to have end-to-end connectivity. And of course, as soon as you talk about connectivity, the right security needs to be in place as well. And that's exactly what we're offering with our SD-WAN solution. Some of you might know that the SD-WAN solution was not something that VMware has developed on their own, but it was an acquisition of a couple of years ago. And I'm actually very proud to be able to say that now for 3 years in a row, Gartner has recognized VMware as the top leader in that specific SD-WAN quadrant. So I used to work at other organizations where I typically was not in that quadrant. So now that I am, obviously I am going to use that slide. So something to be proud of. This also means that we're doing a very good job in terms of being able to deliver on our promise and to develop even further on that platform. So what is it that we're delivering? The architecture that we provide in terms of SD-WAN consists of 2 major components and typically a third one as well. On the left, we see the VMware SD-WAN orchestrator. That's a cloud-based portal where you as an organization or as a customer can manipulate how the SD-WAN is operating. So basically, this is your control plane. If you're a bit technical, this is where you will define what your policies are, how your sites are going to interact with each other, whether that's direct connectivity to dynamic routing, for instance, or highly secure through VPN kind of configurations. What the specific business policy should be, what your applications look like, and what needs a priority over other kinds of applications. So all of that is handled in the SD-WAN orchestrator. As I mentioned, it's by default cloud-based, which means that it's out of your hands in terms of needing to make that available. But if required, we can also do that on-prem. But honestly, I think only 1% of the customers I'm talking to is doing that on-prem because of the benefit of the cloud. So the orchestrator is there to manage the entire platform. And then all the way on the right, we see the VMware SD-WAN Edge. The edge device, or the edge component, I should say, is what's typically installed on all the branches or on all the physical locations that require connectivity between them. So those are the peering points, if you want. You will typically put an edge in one or more branches, as well as in your data centers. They can be delivered in a physical form, so as a box, and then the box scales according to the bandwidth demands you might have. A very small box will have limited throughput, where the bigger boxes have a lot more throughput and other functionality, which I'll discuss in a second, that come with it. Can also be delivered in a virtual form factor, which then opens a lot of different use cases, which I'll also cover in one of the next slides. In the middle, you see the VMware SD-WAN gateways. Now, the gateways are a different breed of the SD-WAN edges, because in itself, basically, there are also edges, but they are hosted in our POPs, so a worldwide availability of those edges, as well as in different cloud service providers. So what I mean by that is basically you have the ability to connect to an edge device that's hosted, for instance, at Microsoft or at Google or at Salesforce or at, again, specific service provider partners, which means that through the overlay that we're managing, which I'll show in the next slide, you now have direct connectivity from an edge device in your branch to another edge that's now hosted in the cloud that you're consuming. So a direct point-to-point connectivity, again, with the right security in place, etc. These gateways are typically managed by VMware or service provider partners. So if we put all of that together, you will see on the top the SD-WAN orchestrator, orchestrating everything that's underneath, again, as in a control plane kind of way. And underneath, on the left, we have a branch. On the right, we have a data center. And what we're going to do is put an SD-WAN edge device in each of those locations. And those locations typically will have some form of connectivity already in place. That could be private lines already there or an existing MPLS. But what we're focusing on here is internet broadband lines. So for Belgium, the Proximus and the Telenets of this world, as well as any 3G, 4G, or in the near future, 5G kind of connectivity. We will consider those landlines, if I may call them that, as the transport layer, right? Over those transport lines, we will create what's called an overlay. So basically what we're doing is we're taking charge of those SD-WAN edges and we're creating a virtual network on top of all those nodes. Once you have a virtual network in place, you can control how traffic is flowing between your branches to the cloud, to specific cloud SaaS or IaaS kind of providers, back to your data center or from your data center to the cloud. Different ways are possible. You can decide then if you just simply want connectivity in terms of dynamic routing protocols, or you want, for instance, a full meshed VPN kind of overlay. Everything is possible there. And as I mentioned, directed through the orchestrator. So a typical installation, and this is a bird's eye perspective, could look like this. And on the left, we see a branch site, which is hosting three physical lines, two of which are just public internet lines. So one could be Proximus, another could be Telenet, for instance, or something else. And the third is the existing private circuit, which could be an MPLS. As soon as that edge device is there, we will consolidate those three lines, but we will always take in account the health and the nature of those lines. So, for instance, we could say specific applications we're going to redirect over the MPLS, and then more cloud-based applications like Office 365, for instance, we're going to direct over the public internet with the right priority taken into account. Same thing happens on the right in your data center. It's also just an edge device. It probably will be a very big box, again, depending on the bandwidth that you require. And some of the gateways then will run either in the cloud, or typically it will run in the cloud, especially for those locations where you don't want to put a box. Then you can peer those gateways directly with a legacy enterprise data center, which you see here on the top right. So that's a cloud hosted gateway, and then through routing and VPN on top of it, we can also link an older site to this new way of doing SD-WAN. Right. So the benefits of doing this, enabling the WAN transformation, I've cut up in 4 chapters. And the first one is all about simplifying WAN operations. It's not only about the interface of the orchestrator. The interface of the orchestrator is made in such a way that we have made it extremely easy to onboard any kind of organization onto this platform. We steer away from CLI because if history has taught us something, the typical SD-WAN or WAN, not SD, but WAN installations in the past have been provided by the Junipers and the Ciscos of this world, which is pretty much CLI based. So if you have 50 sites, you needed to make 50 changes. And I know this is a very negative way of putting it, but that's where it comes down to. So we want to make that management as easy as possible. And I myself have dubbed this the Apple model. What do I mean by that? For instance, if you need a VPN, you just check the box VPN and then everything is deployed for you, right? Up front, you could have decided what the algorithm is and the cipher and the key exchange and all of that. But basically that comes down to a template that you then just push down to your data plane. Same is true for defining applications. We are sitting on that edge, so we are in a very interesting position to see what kind of applications you're actually consuming over the internet or between your sites. And we also have built-in application recognition, so we can have priority on those applications as well. If you have business critical applications, will give those more priority, where we will then decide which physical line we're going to use to consume that application, and then perhaps a bit less priority to the YouTubes, for instance, of this world. But all of that is done through the orchestrator, which is an extremely easy way of onboarding into SD-WAN. If you want to get acquainted with this interface, I've put a link in the presentation in the bottom right corner, which is a link to the hands-on labs of VMware, and it takes you by the hand and just clicks you through the interface so you know what's going on there. There's already a lot of information, again, because we are in a unique position on the WAN to see what's going on from that side of the network. There's already a lot of information in that in the orchestrator, but that can even be enriched with other products of the VMware portfolio. And I'm quickly going over them because it's not the focus of this seminar. On the right, we see vRealize Network Insight, and this allows you to create a full path visibility over everything overlay and underlay, which typically means everything physical and or virtual. Right? So if you want to have complete visibility of your WAN as well as your data center in terms of switching and routing and where a firewall decision has been made, vRealize Network Insight is especially the tool you should be looking into, because let's be very honest, the SD-WAN solution will take care of the SD-WAN solution. So the reporting and every kind of logging that comes out of that platform will be, between brackets, limited to that SD-WAN solution. If you want to extend that visibility into the data center towards your applications and cover the entire end-to-end security, vRealize Network is what you need to look into. On the other hand, on the left, we have a relatively new product in the VMware portfolio, which is called VMware Edge Network Intelligence. And that solution is more concerned what's happening behind the WAN. So from a data center perspective, you have different branches. Again, the Velo Cloud solution, the SD-WAN solution, will take care of that WAN aspect. But behind that WAN connectivity, you will have edge devices, printers, IoT, desktops, perhaps some Wi-Fi connectivity or guest connectivity you're providing to the users or your customers. How are you going to monitor that? That's something that VMware Edge Network Intelligence takes care of. Just a small overview. We're also very concerned about application performance because, again, as you saw in the introduction, it's one of the main reasons that organizations are looking into SD-WAN. And the way we adapt to this is by an algorithm that is called the DMPO, which stands for the Dynamic Multipath Optimization. You don't have to remember that. But what you do have to remember is what it can provide you, what it brings to the table. What the algorithm is doing is actually looking at every single packet that goes over the edge. So a packet, for your information, it's the let's say the lowest form of communication you can have between two peers that are communicating with each other. A packet is typically part of a flow, and a flow is typically part of a session. So when you have visibility on each and every packet, you can start making decisions on that, right? So the entire SD-WAN solution is monitoring each and every packet, which allows us to steer those packets when something moves away from the norm. So what could that be? For instance, something very drastic, a line is down. Okay, as you saw in the example of the architecture earlier, we saw that we have two typical internet connections and then one MPLS line. So in the case you're doing some Zoom like we are doing today, and one line goes down, that should not be noticed. That should the consumer of that solution should not notice that the line has gone down. So we will then load balance between available lines and give priorities where needed. Again, if you're technical, on a per packet basis. So the actual flow will never be interrupted. You will not see any loss or degradation of your video call. We do this by continuously monitoring every link on which the solution is entered. So again, in the example I gave, it's 3 links, or could be less, could be more. And once we have that knowledge, we can steer that traffic dependingly. In my example, it was very drastic. A line goes down, but it does not need to be so drastic. You can also have already some packet loss. A 1% or a 2% packet loss could already drastically change how you consume a video call through Zoom, for instance, over a WAN link. To put that in perspective, and I'm not really sure if this is going to come true, but on the left, we have a very degraded, no, that's not the word, very bad experience of a video call. And what's happening is only 2% of the packets are being lost. So if you don't have the right prioritization in place, so simple network connectivity, then that will be your experience. On the other end, if you have something like the VMware SD-WAN solution in place, we will take care of that packet loss and steer the packets on the links that are available, or prioritize packets or buffer packets or entire sessions if you want, wherever that is required, so that you as the end user of that solution have the correct experience. It's also very important to understand that we will take care of your applications as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're in a unique position where we can see what kind of applications. So from an architecture point of view, we are uniquely positioned on the WAN side to see what the applications are that you're actually consuming. And again, once you know, you can take that into account. We have built-in deep application recognition. So if you say, I want my Salesforce to work better, you just check it and you give it the right priority. The priority here indicated in the middle, it's very simple: high, normal, low. Or based on the type of application, whether that's a real-time application like a video call or an audio call, or a transactional application or transactional way of communicating between the two peers or multiple peers, or if it's a bulk kind of traffic, people that are aware how networking works or have ever done some kind of WAN installation will recognize the terms real-time, transactional, and bulk. So we can classify them as such based on what the application is doing. In a real-world example, again, you will give the right priority to Office 365 or your Salesforce or whatever kind of core application that you have. And everything that you have not defined then will have less priority. For instance, when there's a football game and everybody wants to go to YouTube to stream it, that's perhaps not the right way how you want to consume your SD-WAN. So we can take care of that as well. I've also mentioned the move to the cloud. So we want to make that move as easy as possible by providing an easy cloud adoption way. As I mentioned during the architecture slide, what we're building is an overlay network. So everybody is basically virtually connected to everybody else. And those everybody else's, those can be your branch sites, obviously, but also those gateways hosted in the cloud. And once you have that direct virtual connectivity, you can steer traffic to that in depending on your business policy. So, for instance, if you have an organization that's 100% cloud-based, then most of your connectivity will go over your internet lines with the right prioritization, with the right security to start consuming those cloud services. On the other hand, if you still have applications running in your data center, right, then the policy will shift slightly towards the data center. The point is, you now have a foot in the cloud, something you can leverage. You don't need to manage that component. That's part of the solution in its whole, but you can consume it because it's there. As an example, we have here 4 edge devices, so 4 branches. Between them, we could put IPsec tunneling, for instance. So one of the typical ways to do is through the full mesh VPN, where you have every branch connected to every other branch, as well as your data centers, obviously, through that VPN, to that secured VPN connectivity. But you can also have those gateways that you can leverage in the cloud. And those gateways are all over the world, again, as part of the solution. So they can be for a SaaS-based application where you will then consume Skype or Zoom or Salesforce or Office 365 and the typical SaaS offerings. And or you can also have a foot in the typical IaaS-based platforms, so the infrastructure as a service. So if you have a lot of workloads running in Amazon or in Microsoft Azure or in any other cloud, we can put a gateway there, so you have that end-to-end responsibility and connectivity. So this greatly simplifies how you're going to consume those services, because you now have a foot inside those data centers that you can leverage. Those data centers, we call them the POPs. That's where our gateways are. We have about, well, every month it's more, but we ticked off at about 2,000 gateways worldwide, located over more than 100 POPs all over the world. They come with their own SOC. They are being monitored by VMware. They're just there for you to consume, right? So you as a consumer of this solution don't need to host them. You just leverage them. And then finally, we also need to take security into mind, because everything I've been talking about, apart from VPN, obviously, is all to do with connectivity. We also want to make it as secure as possible. Now, the platform in itself is already graded on a very high security level. So we use the latest forms of security wherever applicable to make sure that the control plane in itself, so the orchestrator in itself, has the proper security mechanisms, as well as the data plane, the edges, and the gateways. So for I'm just going to highlight a few of them. For the orchestrator, the control plane, we use encryption wherever it's necessary. We also have role-based access control, because again, the platform is cloud-based. So we adapt to a multi-tenant environment there, where you as an organization can have multiple tenants, but we as the provider of the solution will see different consumers as different tenants, obviously. It all comes with event logging, firewall logging, so you can redirect that to your own SIEM if you want, or use the built-in logging mechanisms. It comes with its own built-in certificate server, again, to have the right certificates in place and relevant stuff. On the infrastructure, so especially the gateways then, as I mentioned earlier, we have a dedicated NOC team that's monitoring that those data plane components on a 24/7 and throughout the year way. The edges themselves, they are fully FIPS 140 compliant, so in terms of IPsec tunneling IKV2 mechanisms, all is in place to have a secure environment. You can have multi-factor authentication, and of course, a complete PKI-based key management is in place. With all of that, and on top of all of that, the entire infrastructure has passed two, I think, relevant certifications for our region. One is the PCI, the Payment Card Industry DSS certification, which means that the entire platform is ready to host financial kind of applications, and as well as, especially for Europe then, GDPR compliancy. More importantly, what does that mean for you? That means that on the right hand here, you have a data center that's already properly segmented, properly secured, right? So these could be as simple as VLANs, but typically we talk about a software-defined data center. So something like NSX is in place, and you have already segmented your east-west traffic and your north-south traffic with the right firewall policies and the right IDS, IPS kind of mechanisms in place. So once you have that exercise and you start building out your WAN, should you throw all of that knowledge overboard, or should you adapt to that strategy that you've already put in place? I would prefer the latter, obviously, and that's exactly what we enable with our VMware SD-WAN platform, because we can adapt to those policies that you have in place inside your data center and keep those intact over the branches. A simple example that you see here, if you have a guest segment and you want to provide that same kind of connectivity to the branch devices, that guest segment gets respected basically all over your WAN environment. Same is true for your PCI network where you do your financial transactions. Same is true for corporate applications, and please use your imagination for other use cases here. The point is we keep all of that intact and respect those segments that form of segregation. All of that is built into the platform. That's really easy to consume because of VLAN knowledge, because of tagging, because of that overlay integration. But that's typically not enough for a modern data center. Well, not a data center alone. Of course, the WAN connectivity is what we're talking about here. So typically organizations are looking into having more and more security in those branch devices. And then we're looking into next generation firewall features. Typical stuff like network security, but also application protection, anti-malware protection, general threat prevention, making sure that the right user is accessing the right kind of information. So user identity protection, the segmentation-based access control I mentioned earlier. All of that is to some form and extent built into the platform. But what we mostly see is that a lot of our customers are leveraging their existing security partner in this case. And a part of this context, of course, Checkpoint, because they already know how to manage and secure that platform. And that's something that we enable in our solution as well, to be able to bring that next generation firewall service into our platform. So then together we make that entire platform stronger. We can do that in several ways. And Richard, this is my last slide, so I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, but I'm just highlighting the way of putting that in place. So on the left, we have our built-in controls, and in terms of security, let's call it limited for now, right? It comes with a firewall, it comes with that segmentation knowledge, it comes with that application recognition, but in itself, it's absolutely not a next generation firewall kind of approach to security. It has quite a few things built in, but it could benefit from more. What I mean by this one, so if you just use the SD-WAN Edge in itself, you will typically consume the cloud-based security. So if you then have connectivity to your IaaS or other kind of clouds, you will consume some cloud variant of a security mechanism as part of that service. So not so much on the edge itself. That's what I'm trying to say. Then in the middle, the edge itself, and then depending on the size of the device you're going to purchase, we can insert that next generation firewall functionality on the appliance, on the edge itself. So it's an integral part of that edge, because again, it sits at that branch location. So it makes sense to do security there. Or, and that's an alternative, because of course you're talking to VMware, and if you ask VMware a question, the first response will be virtualize it. And if you talk about virtualization, you could adapt to what we call a micro CPE. And then basically what you're going to do is buy some pizza boxes from HP or Dell or whatever, put VMware software on top of it, and then host all the services that you require for your branch on top of that virtualized platform. One of the services could be the SD-WAN solution. As I mentioned, it's also virtually available. Another next to it on the same platform could then be Checkpoint. In all its glory, the CloudGuard functionality can be hosted there, but then you still have room for other applications, for instance, to do analytics, or to manage your IoT, or to have a front end of your application already available in your branch. So the world is really open there. And with that, I have come to my final slide, the key takeaways. So what I want you to remember of this is a lot of organizations are looking into transforming the way they do connectivity and security over the WAN. And obviously, as soon as you start doing that exercise, you will start looking at SD-WAN as a key enabler for that. And I hope I made it clear that VMware is a very valid player in that market. And apparently I've hit my time mark as well, on the mark.
Perfectly.
I haven't taken a look at the chat, so perhaps there are questions?
No questions have popped up so far. We are having a 15-minute break normally right now, but I'll allow everyone to talk. So if there are questions about this presentation, about the VMware part, do shout out or just ask them. Let me just quickly allow everyone. We'll see some names popping up. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and just ask it. If not, we'll be back at 11:30 for Richard's presentation. So
Seems it has been pretty clear, Frederick, so far.
That was my hope, yes.
Okay, great. I'll share. Okay, can you see my screen? Just check if everything's okay on that side.
yes.
Okay. Good morning, almost noon, everyone. So thanks for attending this call. So I will cover the security part of this webinar, following up on the excellent presentation of Frederick, and which is quite nice because I will be able to really catch up with some parts of the presentations that he showed as well this morning. So just a short agenda to begin with. So a really short introduction to SD-WAN. Fred already covered some part of it, but I'll highlight some points which are relevant to the security challenges. What are the solutions that we as Checkpoint bring to this SD-WAN solutions, and how it fits into the whole Checkpoint vision and strategy of securing not only the perimeter, but the entire data center as well. And how do we specifically integrate with the solution from VMware, the SD-WAN Edge, previously the VeloCloud solution? How do we fit in there with our CloudGuard Edge solution? You'll see some, I would say, really short demo with animations to see how we integrate within, and then we'll wrap up the presentation. So as already explained during the presentation, what we do see today is, of course, many of the productivity and collaborations applications are moving or have moved from the data center to the cloud. Most of the companies now are using Office 365, G Suite, Boxes, Workday, other kinds of applications. And traditionally, the setup that was done is by connecting the branch offices, being the remote site or the work from home offices, through MPLS or other kind of network solution to the data center, whilst the data center was providing the solution of, the whole security and all the configurations, being the network segmentation, security policies, and those kind of stuffs towards the end user. By doing this, in fact, we were backhauling, in fact, the traffic through the data center, which had some advantages in terms of security and management. But in those times of heavy usage of cloud-based applications, what we do see is that it have some implications on the performance and most of the time the latency. We saw it with the video application, but other like video conferencing, high bandwidth applications, which are less easy to manage using, I would say, traditional MPLS solutions, which has to be in some cases over-dimensioned to cope with those applications. So this is what we do see, and one good example of those applications, definitely the CRM application, which used to be on-prem, the SAPs, the Navisions, the Salesforce, or the Oracle financials. We see that the adoption in the cloud has outpassed the adoption of on-premises CRM applications. So that's why this is really important. What we do see also is that by 2023, according to Gartner, we'll see that 90% of the branches will implement SD-WAN over traditional routers. So the idea of SD-WAN is really to build a virtual network that spans over the data center, the branch offices, and the clouds today, in order to ensure a proper way to manage your network segmentation, network security, network performance, in terms of enterprise network services that has to be provided. So what are the most important, I would say, requirements that we do see is definitely the application-based routing. It was already shown, definitely the usage of like video conferencing, Zoom, Teams, or other video conference applications need to be guaranteed with a certain level of service level in order to ensure a proper streaming of video applications without hiccups or interruptions. It needs to be also managed from a centralized point. We need to be sure that you can push the policies and the configuration the proper way from centralized management environment. It has to be flexible. So you need to be able to cope with different kind of hardware, software, different kind of deployment as well. It has to be optimized for one. So there are some compression, there are some optimization in the packet ratio that is also done on this level. And all this with the minimum of, I would say, cumbersome management. It has to be done through automation, so not by not using a lot of CLI or lots of commands, but mostly automated tools which enable to deploy a zero-touch, almost zero-touch deployment of your SD-WAN. And one last point, which is also important, is of course the security. So because we need to be protected today towards all kinds of cyber attacks by unified policy, it's not only traditional antivirus or network prevention, but we see now and definitely today in our COVID times, all kinds of new types of applications of cyber attacks using malware, phishing technologies, bots, man-in-the-middle attacks, credential hijacking. Those kinds of applications are really common now, needs also to be secured, and the challenges is now raised with the with the COVID times where most of the people work from home or on the remote side. So what we can see is that SD-WAN as such does not resolve all the branch security challenges. So you really need to add additional functionalities to your SD-WAN to ensure a proper security policy and a proper security from your enterprise users in order to be able to work properly from those remote sites. What we do see is that with SD-WAN, the branch are now directly connected to the internet. So that leaves, as I said, the door open to several cyber security attacks, like, of course, virus, ransomware, but also malicious file downloads, new kind of applications like data exfiltration, session hijacking, man-in-the-middle attacks. It also, also leverages the challenges to be consistent, because you need to be able to deploy a proper security solutions, whatever the kind of hardware or whatever the kind of connectivity that the branch office has. And this makes it more challenges for the enterprises to cope with that. So also one of the issues that we have, if you're using, for instance, gateway or physical gateways in the different sites, you also need to ensure that all the gateways spread across the country or across several regions or countries or even continents stay consistent in terms of security, in terms of patches, in terms of level of protection, without the need to be to deploy a time-consuming efforts in order to get those gateways to the proper level of security. And that is where we as Checkpoint do complement the SD-WAN security in order to leverage and in order to complement those solutions. So what are the most important security consolidation is, in fact, we have to be secure, of course. So we need to provide all the kind of advanced security, being intrusion protection, URL filtering, antivirus, consistent security, anti-bots and other stuffs as well. It has to be flexible because it needs to be flexible in terms of scalability. One of the things that we do see now is the rise of cloud consuming applications and streaming applications like video conferencing and other stuffs as well. So you need to be able to scale the security solution without hampering the user experience. And this is really something important where we also do fit in those solutions. All this was providing a common management platform, enabling the admins to have a clear view on the security policies and be able to cope or address the potential attacks which might or mightn't arise in those different locations. And it has to be efficient, of course, because it has to be easy to deploy in those environments. So, what are the solutions that we have? Because we complement those solutions. First of all, I would like to just step a little bit towards a Checkpoint and see and to I would say comment on one of the most important points that we have, is that the mentality at Checkpoint that we do have is a number one detection mentality, but what we do say at Checkpoint is that we're most active on the prevention, because if you accept detection, you've already lost your war, if we can say this, against your the cyber attacks. So one of the most important efforts that has been done and is still being doing, of course, at Checkpoint is the focus on prevention. So try to detect the attack before it happens. That's really, I would say, the mantra on which the whole Checkpoint portfolio and the whole products are developed. And for this, we developed in this our view, our vision, the Infinity solution, so the Infinity architecture, where we developed a complete framework enabling us to protect not only the endpoints, but also the cloud, the network, the mobile, and also an important thing today is the Internet of Things, which is the next generation of end devices that will appear. All this using what we called Threat Cloud, which is in fact our centralized shared threat intelligence database, which is hosted in a secure way in the cloud environment. Where we share, in fact, the best practices, and we have a complete, in fact, knowledge of most of the attacks coming in from not only virus, but malwares, anti-bots, anti-phishing. It's also fed through third parties, I would say intelligence tools like VirusTotal and other ones, which feeds this database with intelligence. And last but not the least, we also have artificial intelligence, AI-powered machine learning engines, which are running in the cloud, which enable us to modelize the different attack vectors in order to prevent what we call the zero-day attacks, which means, in fact, that we are able to detect even attacks that are not, I would say, documented yet in the different communities. by having some advanced engines that analyze the way that the CPUs are used by malicious attacks, and by doing so by blocking, in fact, the attack before it even occurs. So this one is really the complete architecture, and what we see here is in the cloud. We put it in the cloud because it's also for the edge devices, the branch threat prevention, which is based on CloudGuard Edge and CloudGuard Connect. I will cover mostly the CloudGuard Edge because it complements in the really beautiful way the solutions from VMware. So I'll try to move forward. So what we do have to secure the end, I would say, the branch offices, whether on the cloud or on the premises, is first our CloudGuard Connect, which is in fact a cloud-based network security service, which enable a remote user or remote branch office to securely connect to the cloud using the services that we provide through CloudGuard Connect. The second one is CloudGuard Edge, which is the one I will cover here. It's complementary solutions that runs on the remote side, where we complement, in fact, the network security by providing an additional network layer of security on top of the SD-WAN device. So it's in this case a virtual machine. I will cover this a little bit later, which complements in this case the VMware SD Edge solution by providing all the functionalities that we have in our threat prevention solutions for securing your end device solutions. And this is really, really important. And the last is the on-premises branch security gateway, which is more the classical way of securing your environment. What's important is, as I said, we try to provide the highest level of security. And what is important to notice is that this CloudGuard Edge solution benefits from the whole threat cloud intelligence that we have, where we achieved 100% catch rate. So this has been certified by several studies from the NSS Lab, which is one of the institutions that certifies the security solutions, where we are able to catch, in fact, most of the attacks, even the ones that haven't occurred yet, like the zero-day attacks. And this is thanks to our threat cloud, shared threat intelligence, which run, as I said, in a secure way in the cloud, which feeds all our security solution, including the CloudGuard Edge solutions. So as you can say, we are able to emulate, because this is the kind of solution that we have, if you emulate more than 4 million files or 4 million objects each day, we can provide security decisions. I mean, if you have, for instance, a user which access a malicious website, and assuming that the signature is not known yet of the kind of attack that is there, we can emulate, in fact, the way that the download or a file download will happen in our threat cloud database. And based on the verdict that is done against several decisions made by our engines based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are then able to provide a verdict by saying, is this download, I would say, secure or not? If it's secured, of course, then it will be provided to the customer. If not, then we'll provide a safe version of the download, which is a PDF, a secure PDF versions toward the end user with a minimum impact on the user experience as well. So as you can see, all the solutions that we have are offered as well on the CloudGuard Edge solution, being the firewall, but also application control, intrusion prevention, antivirus, threat emulation, anti-bot, SSL inspection, URL filtering. Also something important is threat extraction, as I said, so the ability to, if you download a file, to clean the file from the malicious potential objects. So for instance, runtimes or VB scripts or those kinds that are integrated within those documents will be cleaned from the file. A PDF, a secure PDF version will be sent to the user while being, in fact, analyzed by the Threat Cloud engine in the cloud. So that's a real time solution that we have. Also, something important is everything concerning content awareness and identity awareness, which is also included in our solutions. And that also can integrate with different kind of, I would say, directory service, being LDAP Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, those kind of stuffs, so that we can also guarantee that specific users access the right applications or the right service in a secure way through those solutions that we offer. So one important thing is that we cover, most of the protocols. We support any IP-based protocol, being DNS, HTTP, RDP, SSH, FTP, or any applications which we can really, I would say, secure the way that we can connect or guarantee the secure connection from the branch offices or the remote site to the application using a secure way by pushing the policies from a centralized way to the branch offices. So this can be, you see some example, it can be cloud-based applications, or it can be Office 365 G Suite application as well. So this is really, I would say, one of the key messages that we have here in our solutions as well. So what I'd like to cover here is a specific point of the integration that we have with the VMware SD-WAN Edge. We do fit with our solution as well, but as this webinar goes with VMware SD-WAN or VeloCloud, I would like to go a little bit deeper into that to show you how we integrate with this in a really transparent way without the need to, I would say, to do some cumbersome management or some cumbersome tasks as well. So what is CloudGuard Edge is in fact, and I can relate to the latest slides that Frederick shown, it's a lightweight VM. It's a VM which doesn't need much, just one core, 1 GB RAM and 1 GB disks. We have some best practices, of course, to scale it out as well if you need more performance. But what we have is that we can reach, for instance, with those Edge, 500 megabit per second threat prevention. So covering most of the security features that we have in our solutions by just running that next to your SD-WAN solution. This is really an important, I would say, an easy way to deploy. You can really use your VMware deployment solutions to deploy those CloudGuard Edge solution, and you'll be able to manage it from our security portal that we offer within our portfolio, and you can also orchestrate that using, for instance, the VeloCloud orchestrator as well. So once it's installed, it really runs on top of your CloudGuard Edge solution, and it can be managed centrally via the orchestrator or our Infinity Portal, for instance, which is one of the management tools that we offer to monitor this. So how does it work? Just a few screenshots to show you how does it work. So in fact, when you create I would say the service, you need to define the CloudGuard Edge as a virtual network function configuration. So it really appears as an additional network service that you'll add into your VeloCloud orchestrator, or SD-WAN Edge orchestrator. Sorry for the mix of the terms that has been recent. So you see that the VNF does appear as an additional checkpoint services within your virtual network function. You just have to add it in your VNF. And once it's available, you can really define your solution by adding the different parameters that need to be added in your configuration to define this additional secure layer. You see some parameters that we have to ensure, like the SIC, which is the Secure Information Communication Protocol that we use to ensure encrypted secure communication between the service and the CloudGuard Edge. We also have to provide some image location, which is in fact the location in which we provide the hashing parameters for your CloudGuard Edge that will be deployed on top of your SD-WAN, and some additional information that you need to type in order to ensure the proper deployment of this CloudGuard Edge configuration. So you can see the image location, the image version, some access keys that you need to answer, and when it's there, in fact, you can really see that the device is now ready to be included into your VNF. What you can do once the service is defined within the VeloCloud orchestration, you can select the devices or the gateway on which you will deploy this CloudGuard Edge. So this is a simple example with two sites or two devices. If you have a complete region or several countries with different devices, it's even easier to configure it on this interface. Then you can really choose how to deploy it. So specific details on the management interface or the IP that you will need to use to connect the management from can be deployed from this I would say from this interface. So you can really select the VLAN that on which you will deploy this CloudGuard edge solution. Select the management IP on which you will connect in a secure way from this environment. And you can really see the VNF, which is already discovered in this environment as a checkpoint firewall. It's a checkpoint firewall, but you need just the total threat prevention that will be in there. And once it's done, you can really choose how to deploy it on the scale, and you can see here that it's completely available in your I would say in your VeloCloud view. You see the edge or the gateway, the SD-WAN edge device with the security which is enabled, the VNF, and you see that it's protected in this case by the checkpoint firewall. So it means that you have the whole intrusion protection threat prevention solution that will be applied towards your SD-WAN environment in the transparent way on the complete, I would say, environment level that you have. So how does it appear? So this is the way. Suppose that you've defined the complete routing, the complete policies on your gateways, on your, I mean, on the VeloCloud, on the SD-WAN edge orchestrator solution. The way that we will appear in this environment is that we would just appear as an extra bridging, in fact. So it's a complete bridged virtual network function that will just connect different ports or the different subnets or different VLANs that you have towards the different connections that we have. So you can have the connection to the branch office, the connections to the data center, or the connections to the cloud, which will be just securely managed as well by this security gateway that will come, I would say, next or on top of your VeloCloud orchestration. So it's completely transparent, and you can really by doing this way, manage your environment doing this way. So it's really, really flexible, because once it's done, you can really add, in fact, several gateways using the VeloCloud orchestration as well. Sorry, as a plugin in there. You can really choose the edge device, choosing the VNF. You can also define this, and this is also something key. This, I would say, VMware SD-WAN Edge Gateway as a new object in the firewall in our checkpoint management console as a new object. So you can define as many objects as you want. It can be a dynamic object or a static object, and this will be deployed in your environment. So that's really key, and this is really nice to show that it's really easy to integrate this solution within your environment as well. So what are the, so this is in a nutshell the way it is integrated in there. We also are developing this product, of course. We have some additional features that are also introduced in there. One of the features that we have is the expansion to Microsoft Azure as well, in order to connect for everything concerning for identity protection, for instance. So you can really add extra security by using extra hubs to connect to this. And another point which is really key is everything concerning identity awareness. So the idea is really that we can secure, or I would say define the user or the object in terms of specific users that have or has access to specific resources, using, for instance, Active Directory services or G Suite or a generic SAML server to allow the connectivity from your branch office to specific applications. And this is something that has been introduced recently, and it's available as well in order to enhance the security and the user experience to this. So that's really key. We have the, I would say, some technical documentations and some white papers describing this, how to do that. So in summary, And this is also a slide that I can also reuse from what Frederick shown. How do we leverage? So this is the VMware SD-WAN orchestrator. So you see really the segmentation and that network segmentation done between the remote site or the data center or SaaS applications. So you can see how we can segment different networks between the environments. How do we plug it into there? As a checkpoint solution, we have two ways to insert the security in there. We have the checkpoint, I would say CloudGuard Connect, which is a direct connection or direct tunneling to the cloud using the CloudGuard Connect. So this is the one that I didn't cover in this presentation. But the other one that we do have is the CloudGuard Edge, which really runs on top of your SD-WAN Edge devices. And this ensures, the proper communication in a secure way towards from the branch device to the data center, the enterprise data center, or the SaaS applications. So it's completely transparent. You benefit from the latest stuffs from our solutions, being intrusion protection, intrusion detection, threat extraction, anti-bot, antivirus, and all this in a centralized and transparent way. So this is really nice solutions that will complement the security of your environment. We do have lots of resources that are available. You'll receive, as I think, this presentation as well. So you have the links to this and to most of those resources. We have lots of information that we can share, and I'll be more than glad to help you. I would say go deeper into that if you need to have some demo of some test environments of those environments to be able to run through it. So I'm a little bit before, because I still have something like 10 minutes left, I think. So that concludes my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions or any comments or additional information that you might have. Robin, I haven't watched the chat. I don't know if there are questions in there.
No questions have popped up, but I'll allow everyone to talk again. So if there are some questions for you, they can ask them right away if they unmute themselves. Let me think. Everybody can ask a question now. If there are any at all. Thank you for the presentation, Richard.
Thanks.
Let me check. Okay, so it seems like everything was clear at this point. All right, so hopefully it was interesting for all of you as well. I really enjoyed seeing both solutions and understanding more about it. If there are any questions afterwards, please do send them to us. We'll include the contact details of both Frederick and Richard as ourselves, so you can reach out to us. If you think you have a couple of customers for which this could be interesting, please do let us know so we can see to set something up to start the discussion to help you in selling this solution, bringing this solution to your customers. Clearly gives you a lot of value. Yeah, please do reach out. If there isn't anything else, all that remains for me is to thank both Frederick and Richard for your presentations. And thank you all for your patience and attendance for this webinar. I know Zoom fatigue is all around us, but really appreciate you guys sticking with us throughout the presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Robin. Thanks a lot.
All right.